Welcome to the Switchblade Sisters Social Club, a true crime podcast where two sisters exploit their worst fears for your entertainment. You're welcome. I'm Dee.
And I'm Rhonda, and together we are the Sake Sisters. For more information, check out our website at www.switchbladesistersocialclub.com or find us on Instagram and Facebook at Switchblade Sisters Social Club.
Thanks for listening. Hi, this is Switchblade Sisters Social Club, and this is Dee.
And this is Rhonda.
We are the Sake Sisters, and this is a true crime podcast where two sisters exploit their worst fears for your entertainment. You're welcome. Have we got any gossip? We've got loads of merch.
Yes. And we moved over to a different
merch.
platform. We moved over to Redbubble, and the quality is amazing. The t-shirts are even better quality than before.
Yeah. And if you buy them, you help remunerate us and fund our lifestyles, which today involves spending 150 quid at the vet because my dog can't keep out of bushes and keeps scratching her bulbous eyes on branches.
Ouch.
So if you care about Lola at all, buy a t-shirt.
And we designed a new range for you, the Sexy Listener range.
Sexy listeners, you know why? Because you're so fucking sexy.
Speaking of sexy listeners, I was looking at our stats the other day, which I haven't done in a few months, because do you know what? We're now so deep into this that it doesn't even matter how many people listen.
Do you know what I mean?
Like we said before, we would do it just for the ones we know about it and DM us, you know?
Can I just say a shout out to Simone, whose profile picture on Instagram is our logo?
Oh my God. It's things like that are like wow moments.
That's when we feel like we've made it.
Yeah.
When someone buys a t-shirt and when someone changes their Instagram photo.
God.
Wow. Yeah, I know it's overwhelming, isn't it? Like it's so lovely. I mean, one of the things that I did last week was hang out in Isla's new bookshop, Criminally Good Books New York.
That's the gossip. That is the major gossip in our lives.
It's open now. I mean, by the time this comes out, it would have been open a few weeks. Head down there. If you haven't been to York, it's so fucking cute. Go and make a weekend break of it anyways, because it's, I'm going to get the stats wrong, but it's something like 65% or 85% independent shops and restaurants, which means it's just got like such a cute, unique vibe. It's a bit like the center of town is
so nice, isn't it, to see a high street that's not just Starbucks and Costa.
I know, and it's all cute little things like Socktopus, which is a sock shop, and do you know what I mean? Like just really, really cute.
It's a great name.
Yeah, it's got like loads of Harry Potter themed stuff because the Shambles is what Diagon Alley was based on. The Shambles is a lot like Brighton Lanes, you know, cobblestone little streets, pedestrianized streets with all these independent boutiques and shops. The Ghost Merchant is super cute little shopping experience. It's so much fun. So head over to York anyways, go to Criminally Good Books, but obviously helping in the shop and talking to our customers. I talked to a lot of people that have listened to our podcast or who said they were going to listen, and it was just lovely.
Oh my God, we got to do better, Dee. After I saw our stats, I was like, shit.
Well, we know we're going to have to arrange a meetup soon.
We've already got one attending. Coventry Karen's coming.
Right. So I need you to make a poll to figure out days and locations that suit our listeners. And also we're thinking about doing some podcasting workshops. So we have a course. A podcasting course that you can buy on our website, but we're thinking about doing that as a day workshop because we know some people learn differently. And some people will buy a course and never do it. Me. You're quite good at buying courses.
Oh my God, I have a course addiction. I honestly, like, I have a course addiction. Every time I do a course, I'm like, that is the last one. And then I'll do another one. Yeah. But they're all work related. So they're all useful. But yeah,
but some people prefer doing it in a kind of workshop environment where you can ask questions and you get told things face to face and stuff. So we're debating that.
Oh my God.
Which will be, again,
Imagine
really
if
fun
some
to
of our
meet the
listeners
listeners.
came to see us in person. Oh my God. And we'd
And
have
of
to
course,
run.
we're always doing our events at, well, I am doing events at the brewery market every 2 months, different themed events where we pair true crime cases with craft beers, which is just fun.
Oh,
All right, well, we've got a little situation
oh,
today. No, it's a
oh,
good one. It's a good
oh,
dilemma.
oh, oh, I have something to say.
Go on.
So you know how I was talking, like, it was probably a few months ago now, about how I had this fear set in about, like, what the fuck do we do if Dee doesn't know something? Because you're the one who everyone goes to because you know how to do everything and you know everything. And if you don't know something, you'll figure it out and you'll fix it and you'll do stuff for other people. That's been our dynamic. And then, like, yeah, so I had that moment of fear and I was like, no, it's just imaginary. But then not so long ago, we had a certain taxation situation, remember? And you didn't know what the fuck to do.
Yeah, so I
And that
asked.
was scary. That's my worst fucking fear.
Yeah,
Forget
because
all this crime stuff. D not knowing how we can access our
it
funds.
combined two of our worst fears, me not knowing what the fuck to do and taxes.
Money that we needed that was not accessible. Three.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, so that was
Sorry
like
about
one of
that.
my worst fears realized. Thank God Dee found out what we had to do.
So I did
And
fix it.
yeah, you did. But there was that moment where you said you didn't know, and there was no solution that was on offer.
I was hoping that would be the one moment where you're like, never mind, I'll figure it out for
No.
myself. But it was not. Anyways, guys,
So what
don't
were you
worry.
saying? We got a
We're not
situation.
going to
What's
do
that?
a Truman Capote.
Capote?
Capote. What was
Yeah.
I going to say?
I don't know what
Where
you're
we
gonna
get
say.
done for tax, fraud, whatever,
No,
embezzlement.
resolved, sorted.
All right. So the good problem that we have today is
Okay.
that because I've been back and forth to York loads and I've
Mm.
been using those train journeys to do a lot of research,
Mm-hmm.
I have a couple, well, I actually have, sorry, just bear with me. I have like 4 or 5
Oh shit.
different cases
Okay.
in the bag, and I've spent all freaking day thinking, which one should I actually do tonight? So,
Okay. Oh, I gotta make a choice.
yeah, but without me telling you what the
Okay,
cases
okay, okay,
are.
okay, okay.
All right. So we've got one that doesn't involve murder and involves celebrities.
Oh.
We've got one that's old-timey,
Mm-hmm.
Victorian. We've got one that is related to our 90s
Mm-hmm.
loves. And then we've got one that's very much that I did this week off the back of our last week's recording.
What was last week?
Phoebe Handsjuk, you
Oh
remember
yeah,
the,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
the lady that was found in her bin room in her block of flats, and there was speculation about whether it was a homicide or suicide,
Mm-hmm.
that she decided to kill herself by
Mm-hmm.
putting herself down this rubbish chute. Um, so it was one that I did off the back of that because it's a very similar case.
Mm-hmm.
And I
I want
hinted
the first one.
the celebrity, no
Yeah, of
murder.
course. Yeah, of course I want that one.
All right, okay, let's do that. That was actually the one that was planned for today, but
Okay,
I
cool.
thought
That's
I'd
what I
give you.
want.
All
Go,
right,
go, go.
so
Tell me the fucking story.
I was
Stop
waiting
fucking
for
around.
it. So, still being on the mission and not trying to depress the fuck out of you. So I
Mm-hmm.
was still trying to look at this point at some non-murdery crimes that were still shocking. And there's loads. There's loads, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I also know that you like a little bit of gossip about
Of course.
celebrities,
Of course.
right? So today I'm going to do the American University admission scandal.
Oh, okay, go.
So I'm sure you've heard of it.
Yes.
All right. And I'm sure you know some of the details, but I'm going to go in.
Okay.
So I also call this case the case of where rich white people thinking they can do whatever the fuck they want in life and usually getting away with it. And even when they are busted, the consequences are so minor, it was worth the risk for them.
Yeah.
Case.
Yes.
Right? It's the
Yeah.
theme in a
Yeah.
lot of ours.
Mm-hmm. And
Right.
also, I remember this annoyed me so fucking much because I remember there was this case of this woman who's in jail just for putting a different postcode in America so that she could get her kid into the right school.
Right.
You know?
So, and this does cross this, we'll talk about the morals of all of this afterwards, because I don't have kids, but I totally understand wanting to do the absolute best for your child
Hmm.
and giving them the biggest, best opportunities in life. And so it's like, where do you draw the line? Because I also agree with you. I totally I'm okay with someone putting a different postcode down. I'm not okay with what happens in this case.
Hmm.
And where's the line? Because they're
Yeah, because
both
that's
technically
why it was so
wrong.
sad, because the lady put different postcodes. She was from low income family. I think she was a single parent wanting the best for her kid. That I completely understand doing. I've taught kids whose parents have done that, you know? I like I get that. But also it's like those rich people who did that, their kids are gonna do
Well,
decently in life.
regardless.
Yeah. And also, why don't they start younger? I know I always sound judgy because I am, but why don't they start when their kids are younger, instilling the right values in them or like encouraging them to work hard?
Well, that's it. Is the difference that presumably the woman who's in jail, her kid got into the school off of the kid's own merit. The
Hmm.
only the only sort of fraud was an address thing,
Hmm.
whereas these kids are getting into unis that they would not qualify for
And you know what? I have to,
academically.
for transparency, and I've talked about this a lot in the last few years. Like, obviously, the twins, my twins, they go to a special needs school for autistic kids. And anyone that knows anything about that will know how fucking hard it is to get places in a special needs school. Like, there are, I think, God, I can't remember the stats, but it's
I
something
mean,
like there's thousands of kids across the country that will never get a space because there just are more kids that need it than there are spaces. And I don't know the stats, but they're very important
and
to
the
know it.
whole process was so complicated, so
Yeah.
many hoops to jump through. You have a history working in the education sector, so you know more than your average person about autism and
Mm,
the education system,
yeah.
and you struggled.
And I can
So,
honestly say the last time I cried was about this a few years ago because they wanted to send one of my
oh,
kids to one school, one kid to another school.
that's awful. But the last time I cried was this morning when Isla
Oh
had a
gosh,
kidney stone.
oh, that is, yeah. Oh no, I'm lying. The last time I cried was Isla on the radio.
Isla on the
But that
radio.
was happy crying. That was like proud
I
crying.
know. If you want to know what made us cry, I spent all last week crying during
Mm,
opening week because I was so proud of her.
mm-hmm.
Um, but on her criminallygoodbooks.co.uk website, there's a link to her the BBC York interview, and she was so good on it.
Oh, so good, so natural, so funny, so interesting.
Yeah. So do
Can't
check
believe
that
it was
out.
unrehearsed because it was so good. So
I
BBC,
mean, the rehearsals we did was literally on the 10-minute walk to the radio station. We were practicing and, researching a few things about World Book Day because it was World
wow.
Book Day,
Yeah.
whatever. So like that woman is fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Anyways,
So yeah,
yeah,
so the
let's
point was
let's have a
for
chat more about the school stuff after we talk about this
yeah.
case.
Okay.
Because then we can go into why we think this is a problem and some other stuff is less offensive to us, I
Mm-hmm,
guess.
mm-hmm,
Because it is interesting, right? Is it
mm,
because they're already rich and they already have opportunities? Is
mm-hmm,
it because the kids didn't deserve academically those places? I don't know. I don't know is the answer. It
mm.
just rubs me up the wrong way. So let's delve in, right? The American college admission scandal, also known as Operation Varsity Blues, was a criminal conspiracy that involved wealthy parents bribing college officials and standardized testing administrators to secure their children's admissions to elite universities. The scheme, uncovered in 2019, included fake athletic profiles and altered exam
Mm.
scores,
Ooh.
leading to numerous convictions, including those of celebrities and business leaders.
Ooh, that's worse than I thought. I thought they
Oh,
just
it
bought a
was
new I honestly I thought they just like bought a new wing for the university or
no.
something.
So
Shit.
that is one of the ways. And we'll
Hmm.
talk about the back door. The front door entrance to unis is when you just apply and you get your place off of your own merit. Back door is when your parents pay for like 20, 30 million dollar wing to the library or whatever. And then the main guy in this, I nearly called him the protagonist. He's not, he's the antagonist. The main guy talks about and his name is Rick Singer. he talks about the side door. So it
Mm.
costs less than buying a wing to get your kid into university, and it's guaranteed, whereas making these big donations is still not a guaranteed way of getting your kid into that uni.
Mhm.
All right, so this one captured my attention because of the people involved, but also the colleges, also known as universities. In the States, they call them colleges, what we call universities. They're all high-profile people, reputable people, supposedly, business people, lawyers involved in this, et cetera, et cetera. So we've got a slightly different system here in the UK. It's changing constantly. It's changed since we were at uni. Now they have top-up fees or whatever, but you pay for your uni fees after you graduate, and once you start earning a certain amount in the UK, you also can apply for means-tested loans. And there's also obviously a lot of like university accommodation and so forth, which is much cheaper than your average accommodation. In the States, you have like junior colleges and community colleges or whatever, but the universities that we think of, the Harvards, the Stanfords, the universities involved in this scandal, they are all fucking expensive. They're like,
Harvard is involved?
I actually don't know if Harvard is, but you know,
Okay.
it's the Ivy Leagues, it's the big names, right?
Hmm.
Because these people, these influential people, are not paying millions to get their kid into some shitty uni,
Hmm.
right? But those unis, they cost, oh, let me Google, let's see.
Oh God,
Um,
going to university in the States
how
is
much
crippling.
does Harvard cost a year? I know it depends on the uni and the this, that, and the other. But if you don't get aid, it costs, oh my God, it's so much more. I would have said like 30,000 a year, $30,000, $83,000.
Hmm.
That's why it's such a big deal to get scholarships, sports scholarships, et cetera, because without that, you just cannot. You
Mm.
just can't, right? So those are the differences. Like, I know our system here in the UK is not perfect, but it's definitely much more accessible than in the US to get into those, you know, those really, really well-known universities. Okay, so Rick Singer is the mastermind behind this scheme, let's call it. And I watched the documentary, which I'll tell you about. And it starts on the 15th of October, 2018. And Rick Singer is actually in this documentary. I mean, it's not the real guy, it's an actor, but the conversations are real, even though I think they're voice actors. So some of them are real because there's a lot of wiretaps involved in this case.
Mm.
Yeah, so
Oh,
they've got like full conversations between a lot of these people.
whoa. I didn't realize this was quite as scandalous as it was. Fuck. Okay.
There's something like 40 or 50 people that went to court because of this, that
Hmm.
got charged with it, that got convicted and stuff. So, that got charged with stuff, and most of them convicted. So, right. So it starts off with this quote. If you want to use my side door at Harvard, it's about $1.2 million. But if you want to go through the back door, Harvard is asking for 45 million. So that's what I was talking about, the back door being like, make a large donation for a new wing
Mm.
or for a new department or whatever. But even that's not guaranteed, because obviously you can't be like, I'll give you this money in exchange for a place for my kid. It,
Mm.
it has to be like, I'll give you this money. Oh, and FYI, my kid is applying next year, you know? Whereas Rick Singer's method is guaranteed, according to him. And by the looks of it, he managed to get everyone in that he took on as a client. He says he helps about 700 people get into uni every year using these side doors. So if you think 1.2 million, I know that doesn't all go to him, but 700 plus people paying 1.2 million, like we're not talking peanuts here.
Mm.
Um, so basically, once they start suspecting that something is going on, and I'll go into more details about why, they start tapping Rick Singer's phones without him knowing. And as a result, over 50 people were indicted for this crime. So over 50 people got charged with something. This was a Merchant Navy moment We need to, we need to make some merchant
Yeah.
Navy merch, don't you think?
Yes.
Merchant Navy merch. Because I was like,
Sea
what does
couriers.
sea courier? You're just a sea courier. All right, make a note. Remind me. Future D in post-production. Can you make a note to make C merch?
And make it look really official. Like an
Oh
official
my God, like
Navy
a work
logo.
outfit, yeah.
Yeah.
Or like a sailor outfit, but it just says sea courier. Anyway, so I was like, what
That's our
does
nest egg.
yeah. What does indicted actually means? So an indictment is a formal accusation in a criminal case against someone suspected of committing a serious criminal offense. So basically charging someone with something. And then if it's proved that they are guilty of it, they are convicted of it, right? People involved included Felicity Huffman
From Desperate Housewives.
from Desperate Housewives and Lori Loughlin,
From
who
Full
is
House.
from Full House. I'm not sure if I'm saying her name right, but I don't care. Also Jane Buckingham, who's apparently a famous author. I mean, these parents, they want the best for their kids. But they were being asked for handwriting samples, signature samples. They were having their SATs faked, and they knew this
Wait,
was
what do you mean
wrong.
handwriting samples? What do you mean?
Oh, so basically, and I'll go into more detail. Some of these parents didn't tell their kids that they were basically not getting in off their own merit. Some of these parents
Oh.
were lying to the kids. I mean, most
Oh.
of the parents in the documentary were hiding the facts from their kids.
Do you know what? I guess, I mean, the whole
I
thing is
get that
shady.
because
Yeah, because I guess if you are shady, you don't want your kids to know you're shady.
you don't want your kids to know their shit. You also don't want them starting at like fucking Harvard, knowing that they don't deserve to be
Yeah,
there.
and have that complex. Yeah, yeah.
Right. So I get that. But
But
so
the other
basically,
thing is, you know what I keep thinking? If they're not Ivy League material, they're going to really struggle their way through university because the difference between a shit university degree and a tough university, it's a lot. So if they're setting their kids up for misery to
well,
send
it
them to.
depends because the thing is with those universities, they get so many applications, and I go into this more, so many applications from amazing people. And probably a lot of people that are rejected would do just fine there and do amazingly well there. But because they have so many applications, they only pick the cream of the cream. Do you know what I mean?
You know, I
Like,
always wondered what has an 18-year-old, what have you got in your
it's
CPA?
these ones that are like
Duke of
they're
Edinburgh.
captain of their sports team, as well as 800 clubs, as well as volunteering in the
Yeah.
community, as well as
Yeah,
being
the
the local town
expectation of what
mayor.
an 18-year-old has
It's
done in their
really
life is
harsh.
high. Yeah.
It's harsh. So maybe these kids would be capable enough to attend these unis. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? But basically, they have to submit handwriting samples and signature samples of their kids so that Rick Singer can fake whatever documents he needs.
Oh.
They're having their SATs faked, and sometimes the kids, like I said, they don't know about it. And I'll tell you about one case in particular that was just like, as a kid, maybe this kid is not smart enough to go to uni, because I'd be like, why am I sitting in this room taking my SAT on my own? But anyway. But basically these parents, they knew what they were doing was wrong. There's no way they could say, oh, I wasn't sure. I assumed it was legit. They knew, right? And other people were literally not afforded this method of cheating the system because you need to have money to do it. This scheme had been going on since 2011, but Rick had been, surprise, surprise, a con man going way back. He started as an educational consultant, helping advise people into college. Because again, this is like
I did
big
some work for
business.
one. He was a Tory. Worst decision ever.
I know, because
Someone like that.
I totally get why these people exist, but you hope that this is the kind of service that's available in school to everyone for free, right? But
Yeah. I mean, oh God, yeah. I mean, I worked in comprehensive schools because I believe in an ideal world, education shouldn't be a commodity,
and it
Yeah.
should be accessible to everyone, including university education.
Mm.
But again, it's big business in the States. Should say a lot of these universities are private as well, whereas here in the UK, most of them are still not private. They're charitable organizations or trust or not-for-profits or whatever, which does make a difference. Um, but anyways, he was working as this educational consultant, again, still for rich people, to help kids navigate their way through the application process and get into uni, telling them what they need to do to get to, you know, what kind of clubs they need to join and where they have the best chance of applying and blah, blah, blah. And then he started finding alternative ways to get them in. Future Stars was his company, and rich parents would pay him to coach their kids into college. He even dressed as an athletic coach because he saw himself as like coach, you know, coach. I know, I hate him too. Let me find you a picture of him.
Oh,
Rick Singer, admissions scandal. That's it. We want the right one. Even his name, it just feels like. All right, let me. Yeah, and when you see him, you're going to be like,
oh God.
Don't know if all these pictures were taken on the same day or whether he just always wears that jacket, but right?
Yeah.
He grosses you out, huh?
Yeah. He doesn't scream trustworthy.
No.
Not that we judge a book by its cover, but you know,
and
we know
he
that about him already.
He seemed to be good at his job as educational consultant, and then I'm sure because of parents asking, oh, is there any guaranteed way, blah, 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 he started developing this system. He started saying he could get people into schools for X amount of money, lying on their applications and saying their race was like changing their race to Latino, for example, so that they would benefit from affirmative action, like positive discrimination and stuff like that. So can you imagine? Oh, your kid's got like slight tan, so we can probably pass them off as Latino. It's just bonkers.
Yeah. But
Then he,
it's taken places away from people that deserve it.
Then his company called The Key. He changed the name of his company, or he shut down one and moved to another, you know, like how conmen do. They're constantly shifting and changing. This was for profit, but he had his charity also called The Key, and rich parents would donate to the charity, making it tax deductible as well. So these people were paying for their kids to go to, like, paying to cheat the system and get their kids into university, and it was tax deductible. And then their kids would get into the school of their choice. He would then use that money to bribe coaches and administrators. So he basically had in position a bunch of sports team coaches and college administrators in his pocket that he would, you know, also bribe to get places and whatever. So, and I'll tell you how that works in a second. And these colleges are already set up to benefit rich white people. The system already benefits these people. Do you know what I mean? Like they prefer people who play niche sports like sailing or fencing or horseback riding. Those are rich white people sports, you know? They're fucking expensive. And then also if you make donations to the uni, it does help your case, you know, which again is something only rich people do. For example, Jared Kushner.
Oh, he's got a face I can't look at.
I know. I can't, even his name makes me gag. His dad, by coincidence, gave 2.5 million to Harvard, and lo and behold, Jared goes to Harvard, even though he was academically a very average kid. But again, there's no guarantees if you make a donation.
The guy who read 25 books on the Middle East that is an expert, what do you mean average?
I know. Rick Singer would often Photoshop pictures of kids' faces onto other people playing sports. So he would one of the schemes was getting kids to apply for different sports teams at uni, you know? So like, oh, this guy is a really good sailor. He's captain of the sailing team. You know, to apply to
the level of deception. I didn't realize. I mean,
I know.
how petty it is, like putting the faces on the pictures. And
I thought it was just a case of a few bribes, but it's actually seriously
a deep level
of fraud, deception, corruption, and so forth. It's so deep. The amount of fucking lies and whatnot. It's not just a case of like, here's some millions, take my kid. It's like
that's what I thought it was. Yeah, just
same.
Just that, it's still bad.
Right.
But yeah.
So sometimes the kids didn't even know about this scheme or the extent of it. Rick Singer in the documentary even told one of the parents, "You don't have to tell him any of this shit. You don't need to worry about it. It's a done deal."
Oh my God. Do you know what? I feel bad for the kids, because if this, I'm sure, will have had a negative impact on them and how they were treated, right?
And also, even the kids that know about what's going on, I can't imagine it's their idea. I
Mm,
imagine this idea would have come from the parents. And imagine if your parent came to you and was like, "Look, this is what we're going to do."
hmm
You'd kind of feel obliged to go along with it, I guess. You'd kind of be like, you would develop a complex. Don't you think I'm good enough to get it
Yeah.
on my own?
Yeah.
Even if I get in, I'm not worthy, blah, blah,
hmm
blah.
And then they're putting their kids, because of the scandal, putting their kids
Or
in the
you're teaching
spotlight.
your kids, well, we've got money, so we can do whatever the fuck
Yeah.
we want, which
Yeah.
is even worse.
And
Um,
exactly. And then you end up with a fucking like kids like the Murdochs.
like Jared Kushner.
Mm.
Um, so to give you an idea of the people that were hiring Rick Singer to help them get their kids into unis, into colleges over there, one client once invited him to a party. The party was at Versailles. He had rented out Versailles.
We used to have ours at McDonald's.
You know what I
Burger
mean?
King.
Like
Oh my God.
it, the irony as well, because that is obviously where there was where they beheaded the
Oh my God. I see
ruling
how why
elites.
I don't know why that's making me laugh.
But that is the level of client that he had, right?
Yeah.
So Rick Singer was first a college advisor in Sacramento, which is a very rich area. So he did well for himself. And he developed a network of administrators and coaches, which he would have even if he was doing this legitimately, right? Um, for example, but he wasn't legitimate for very long, if at all, I don't know. We've got a man called John Vandemore, who was a sailing coach at Stanford.
hmm
He was one of the coaches that got bribed. He was actually interviewed in this documentary. Singer introduced himself as a college coach who wanted to help people get into the smaller sports. So John was interested. You could totally understand why you'd be legit. Like if you're in charge of the sailing team at a uni and you
hmm
need to constantly get good sailors in because,
hmm
those college sports, especially in the States, is super fucking competitive. A lot of money involved in that as well. So it does sound lovely. Oh, this guy is going to help, funnel applicants to your course, your sport at your uni. They
mm
got along well. They talked a lot about recruitment. So basically, each sport at uni, at a college, will get a certain number of spots that they can secure. So this is why you have like scouts coming out to, watch the kids play sports at schools and whatever, because each team can allocate different places to different sports people. I presume it's conditional on them having certain grades, but a sailing coach might go to a school and see that someone's good at sailing and be like, I will reserve a spot for you at Stanford if you
hmm
get, passable grades. And quite often that'll come with a scholarship as well, et cetera, et cetera. So for example, they talked about a girl called Molly Zhao. She really wanted to go to Stanford, but John said he had already done all of his recruiting for the year. Rick asked if there was any other way he could support her, as her family was really wealthy and would donate $1 million. John said that his bosses said that 1 million isn't enough. Then John claims he heard nothing until next year when Molly got into Stanford and Rick called him to say that they wanted to donate $500,000 to his program. John says he was happy to receive a donation for doing nothing. He claims that he had fobbed Molly off because he didn't have space, any of the spaces, and she would have to apply in the normal way. His lawyer then comes on to say that John did nothing wrong and didn't influence admissions at all. To be continued. Rick Singer basically targeted sports that were under the radar. So there's a lot of attention on things like basketball, American football, et cetera, at college level. But
Also,
things
what are the
like
sports under the radar? Lacrosse.
sailing, yes,
Oh, they have that there?
fencing, yeah. So at Yale, um, there was a coach called Rudy Meredith who got more than $860,000 in bribes. So that wasn't for the program itself. It's not like they, Rick was saying, I'll give you money for your program. This was the individual who managed to get all of these bribes. So the school isn't even benefiting a bit, right? Like, I would have a lot more sympathy if these coaches were taking the bribes for their sports program, right? They talked to Jovan Vavic, probably saying that wrong, who was the water polo coach, another sports that went under the radar apparently, at USC, which I guess is University of South Carolina, which is a good university. He got $250,000 in bribes for 2 students to get into the university. Just to put that in perspective, the USC acceptance rate is about 12%. So that's out of everyone that applies, 12% gets in. That's fucking low. So you can imagine most of the people applying will feel like they qualify enough, like they meet the requirements. So most of those, apart from a few Delulu people, are going to be decent applications, right? And yet still only 12% get in. So that just shows how fucking, the pressure on these kids sucks, right? And then on top of that, something we didn't have to deal with when we were applying for uni, social media makes it so much worse because you've got, imagine, all these people posting where they got into university and stuff. We didn't have that. We just told who we wanted, So imagine you didn't get into uni and you're having to go on social media and all your friends and all these people and all these influencers and all this, that, and the other, all showing that they got into all the unis they wanted to, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so Lori Loughlin, let's talk about her. She played Rebecca in Full House, the hot uncle's girlfriend. And she has a daughter called Olivia Jade, who I didn't know anything about because I'm old. Olivia herself is an influencer. Did you know this?
No.
You old too. And she's very young. She's uni applying age, obviously. But she had a large following. She had a lot of branding opportunities. She had like makeup lines and this, that, and the other. And her sister both got into USC. Olivia actually didn't even want to go to college. She just went because she said her parents wanted her to go, which is not normally the attitude of someone who gets into a really, really good university. Like, it's hard enough to get into it, let alone if you don't even care about it. Rick Singer knew in advance that she had got into USC, which is already suspicious. The guidance counselor at their school grew suspicious because he didn't think either girls would get into USC. He would have known them, he would have known their grades and their extracurricular activities, and just didn't think that they should apply in the first place, and then was super surprised that they got in, So there are emails between Lori and Rick about how to distract the counselor from blowing up their scheme. They called him the weasel and the nosy bastard.
Wow.
So, these parents, they know they're fucking doing wrong. They're specifically going out of their way to like cover up their deceit. The counselor had a phone call with someone from USC admissions. I suppose basically it was a routine call to discuss all the applicants, because this is the person who in the school will be providing the service for free. Well, I'm presuming it's a private school, but the one whose job it is to guide them into university and how to apply and this, that, and the other. So he had a regular call with, I'm sure he had lots of contacts with lots of administrators at the unis. He had a regular call with the administrator at USC. And he was talking about all the applicants. And Olivia was flagged as a recruit for the crew team, which is sailing. She had even submitted pictures to the uni of her on a rowing machine. But you have to laugh, because if you're on crew team, you're going to have a picture of you on an actual fucking boat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The counselor said that she wasn't involved in crew or actually any other sports. Massimo Giannulli, who is Olivia's dad, found out about this phone call and that the counselor had told the admissions administrator at USC that like his daughter wasn't involved in sports, went to the school and confronted the counselor. He accused the counselor of trying to fuck over his daughter.
Do you know what? It's like when bad people are annoyed at the good people for doing good, it's ridiculous.
Right? It's like narcissists, you know. Oh,
Hmm.
you're mad at me for doing bad things, yeah. The USC admissions team found out about this confrontation and asked Rick about it. Um, it had made them nervous. Then the sailing team comes back on in the documentary, and the guy talks about how he hates fundraising as part of his job. Um, and again, this happens in privatized education, but also I know that this is a big thing at universities here as well, that a big part of everyone's job is trying to fundraise from alumni and from potential parents and so forth. And I do think that is a really unfair expectation to put on like teachers and coaches and professors or whatever, right?
I mean, it's out
Um,
of the remit.
it should be. It should
Yeah.
be. And most of them will have fundraisers on staff, actual fundraisers, but it's seen as like everyone who works at the uni, it's part of their job is to be constantly fundraising.
Mm.
Um, so focusing on Felicity Huffman, Rick told her that her kids' grades weren't good enough to get in, even though they actually were. So obviously he's trying to make some money, right? He's
Mm.
not going to tell these parents
Oh
like,
my God, it's deception upon deception.
right.
Fucking hell.
And all of these assholes are lying to each other as well.
Hmm.
Don't feel sorry for them. I feel sorry for all the kids.
They have
Um,
literally got caught up in a web of lies.
but obviously he's not going to tell her, oh, don't worry about giving me money. Your kid will be fine, you know?
Hmm.
Um, they often used Rick to fake SAT test results. SATs, I think they do them here now, don't they, as well? But it's standardized testing,
Mm.
usually on like English and maths, and you have to and they make everyone do them. Uh,
They make them fucking do them at like 5 years old here. Fucking
I know.
ridiculous.
Well, in the States, they've always had it because in the States, the curriculum is very different. It's not like you have like a national curriculum or whatever, which we always had here in the UK. So you have a little bit better understanding of like, I mean, I know it's not always the case, but you know what someone doing A-level English, what they're supposed to achieve. It's, you
Hmm.
know, there's national expectations, criteria, and
Yeah.
requirements. There's not anything like that in the States,
Oh, I didn't know that.
really.
Oh, that's
Um,
interesting because then how do you know that everyone's getting an equal education? I mean, you can't ever really guarantee it
through
because
SATs.
okay.
That's the kind
Because
of
yeah.
monitor.
Okay, that's
So
interesting.
that's why they have them. And also you have the different states
Hmm.
that all have their own different things. So
Hmm.
it's much more all over the shop.
Hmm.
Which is why they have always had these like standardized tests so that they could assess how smart you are compared to other kids. But it's not that, is it? It's how much you've learned or how much you've been prepped for
Oh,
that very
fucking
specific
league
exam.
tables. Fucking
Yeah.
league tables.
Whole other
I remember when the head of when the kids were in a mainstream school for a couple of years waiting for the special school, and the head showed me where they were in comparison to national averages, and I literally pushed that piece of paper back to her and said, I this is like
don't
totally
care.
irrelevant.
Don't care.
Totally fucking irrelevant.
Yeah, good. But like imagine if you didn't know so much about the system, how much that would hurt you or
Oh God, yeah.
um how impacted you'd be by the
Yes, you need a
results.
healthy if there's one message, it's have a healthy distrust of
Everyone and
everything.
everything.
Yeah.
But like in the States, for example, and I know here as well, they'll have like courses and stuff specifically to train you for the SATs,
Hmm.
you know, which is just basically teaching you how to take this test. It's not
Oh,
teaching
tests.
you
Yeah,
anything
that's the thing.
else.
This is why I'm not a teacher anymore because well, one of the many reasons, but I just don't agree with testing. Like, you
No,
know,
like why would you ever have to do anything without Google?
the other thing is it's just not a good marker for like assessment of people's knowledge,
Knowledge, common sense,
Yeah.
ability. It's not
coursework is a much,
reflective of
yeah,
any situation you'll ever have in the future. Like I
it's
said, you're never
terrible.
going to have to do anything without the internet. So
And
why?
it's terrible for kids' mental health, first of all, but also things like coursework. This conversation is getting like too much away from true crime.
It's
But
very much an education rant, but
but I mean, coursework is a much kinder way and a more accurate way to assess somebody's knowledge, and the way that's actually much more how it is in the real
yeah.
world, you know? Anyway,
Anyway, so they have SATs and ACTs, which is another standardized kind of test. And Rick Singer would charge about $75,000 to fake these tests. Now, 85% of America cannot access SAT testing coaches or college courses. So what does that say? You know, they don't have the ability to even get extra help, legitimate help to take these tests. And then if you're in the elite, you can just pay 75,000, which I'm sure is pocket money to a lot of these people. If you're hiring out Versailles for a party, 75K is nothing, right? So when you take the standardized testing, he would he exploited, this also makes me angry. He exploited accommodations for learning difficulties. He told students to act stupid so that they get extended time. Then they would take the test again with more time. Then they would set it up so that they take the test on their own with a single invigilator. They are told to fill in a bubble answer form separate to the actual one because of their learning difficulties. So they're telling the kids, you have learning difficulties when they don't, telling them you have to fill in the form in this way because of your learning difficulties. So the student thinks that they've taken the test for real. Then the invigilator, who is someone in the pocket of Rick Singer, he's been bribed, they have been bribed, fills the form in for the actual student, giving the student the exact score that they want.
Oh, it actually makes me feel nauseous, all of this.
The wiretapping caught loads of conversations between Rick and the parents about being caught.
Who was recording it? Who was wearing the wire?
It was his phone. Remember, they wiretapped his phone.
Oh,
When they started getting suspicious of Rick Singer,
oh,
they started wiretapping his phone, and so they were hearing a lot of the conversations. Remember, these parents are all over the country, right?
yeah.
So they're having a lot of conversations. A lot of the parents calling up Rick regularly, anxious about getting caught, which I can understand because they know they're doing something fucking wrong. He advises them that the only way they will get caught is if they talk to people. So how was the scheme exposed? Well, it wasn't that anyone made any mistakes as such. It wasn't even the guidance counselor who was suspicious of the USC
So he's not the
admissions.
whistleblower.
No. It was someone who got arrested on an unrelated charge and gave up information on Rick Singer in return for a more lenient sentence. We love when this happens. They grassed up Rudy Meredith. Remember, he was I think it was basketball coach. Yeah, basketball coach who received something like $680,000 bribes from Rick Singer. And then Rudy Meredith happily threw Rick Singer on the bus in order for himself to get a more
Oh my
lenient
God.
sentence.
What is the phrase when you hang out with pigs, you get covered in shit? What is it?
Let's go with that. That's great. So they then hold a sting to catch Rick Singer out. This is when they start wiretapping his phone or whatever. Rudy Meredith, the coach, arranges to meet Rick with someone from Harvard to bring in on the scheme. Because remember, Rick is constantly looking for administrators, coaches, etc., that he can call up if he gets a client who wants their kid to go to that uni. Rick then got interviewed by the FBI. So during this meeting, obviously, Rick says enough to sort of implicate himself. Rick gets interviewed by the FBI. He wasn't forthcoming, obviously. He said the payments to uni athletics programs were legal. The FBI told him that paying to fake athletic prowess to get into uni is actually illegal. So I thought, I wonder what the law is, you know, what law are you breaking if you lie about your kid being good at sports? I don't know. But actually, what he got done for was his formal charges included racketeering, mail fraud, wire fraud, and tax fraud. So again, another Merchant Navy moment. I was like, what's racketeering? It's a dishonest and fraudulent business dealings. But actually, I want to Google something else. I want to know what the fuck wire fraud is.
Yeah. Is that like wire transfers?
Is wire fraud. Financial fraud involving the use of telecommunications or information technology. Interesting. So those were his charges. Rick agreed to have his, oh, this is interesting. So at first, Rick didn't know that his phones were being tapped and that he was being recorded, like with Rudy Meredith in this meeting with someone from Harvard.
And are police allowed to use anything that they record unknowingly?
Oh, I don't know. I know that that really depends state to state, so I don't know that.
Yeah, because I remember that film Entrapment back in the day with Sean
No, because
Connery.
and each state is different about who needs to consent. Does one party need to consent? Does blah blah blah. So I don't know. But at this point, Rick agrees to have his taps wired now consensually to call other people involved in the scheme, presumably to reduce his inevitable sentence. So he's now fucking throwing other people under the bus.
This guy is just bad news. Any fucking opportunity to be bad news, he's bad news.
Right?
Oh, what happened to him growing up?
He told his clients his company was being audited, and he acted like he wasn't worried at all because that's just what happens. So he told them, obviously, he wasn't going to say that the money received was for bribes for coaches and admin staff or money to fake SAT scores, et cetera, like saying all this stuff outright, basically to get them on tape admitting that that's exactly what the money was for. So basically, the more of his clients that he managed to get to implicate themselves, I guess the better deal he was going to get. So he really threw himself into grassing up all of the parents and getting them on tape confessing in order to save his own skin. But it's like you said, you know you're dealing with scum of the earth. Why do you think they're not going to fuck you over too? So they got the sailing coach as well, admitting to take someone on, even though they weren't actually an athlete. His lawyer admits that the tape was not good for him, and it would have been tough at trial, but it didn't go to trial. It was an unusual sting in that they already had the guy at the top, Rick Singer, and they were trying to get everyone below him in the scheme. So normally they've got some of the minions and they're trying to work their way up and get the kingpin. This time they were doing it the other way around. One parent, a lawyer who should know the law, even stopped Rick talking on the phone and said he wanted to do this in person rather than on the phone. Not realizing that Rick was happy to do this anyways because he was prepared to wear a wire. But again, if you know that it's something you shouldn't talk about on the phone, you know it's because you're doing something not good, right? Several of the interviewed people said that Rick was unsurprisingly a mastermind at getting parents to admit their crimes on the phone taps. One even said, made me laugh. One even said, in quotes, historically, white people have no filter on the phone.
Who said that?
One of the police detectives or whatever that was involved, or one of the lawyers. It just made me laugh because I can't imagine that it's a very cultural thing that you're going to be more suspicious, right?
That's funny. That is funny.
So Rick was going to testify against John, the sailing coach. So John pled guilty because he had no evidence to support his plea that he was innocent, because he was guilty. So he is now a felon for life. This is John, the sailing coach, you know, who claims that these people just applied and got into the university to be part of the sailing team, even though they'd never been on a fucking boat before. They had been on a rowing machine. The scandal blew up when this happened, when John pled guilty and got convicted, because that's when it became public. And again, because of the people involved, the high profile people, the celebrities, in 2019, it blew up and it was a massive, massive scandal. Olivia Jade, you wondering what happened to her? The one who didn't even want to go to university in the
Mm.
first place, but probably had pressure from, I'm not even mad at her because she probably had pressure from her parents, right? She's now an even bigger celebrity as a result.
Oh, okay. So they weren't negatively impacted, the kids.
I mean, I'm sure a lot of them were because just the public attention,
Hmm.
being involved in a
So how
scandal
did she
like this.
benefit from this?
Well, she's got a much, much higher following and she's got more and more and more branding opportunities. But
Oh,
some of the
okay.
fans were disappointed. So I think initially she had a dip and now she's doing just fine.
Hmm.
John, the sailing coach, obviously lost his job, his house on campus, his daycare, his health insurance. His social media was still open for a while and he got hate posts and death threats. But he didn't serve time. Well, he was sentenced to 1 day. So Um, and he had a $10,000 fine, which doesn't seem like that much. Stanford still admitted to having $770,000 of donations from the parents. And this is what is interesting about this case as well. It's rare to have a financial scam where the victims are actually left richer because the
Oh,
universities have received donations in some cases.
wow.
So that's quite funny.
Hmm.
Rick Singer pled guilty to 4 felonies, the racketeering, the wiretap fraud, blah, 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 the wire fraud, etc. Um, he got 42 months in prison.
Hmm.
I'm going to list you some of the things that the
So he's
punishment.
out now, presumably.
I'll tell you these punishments that these different people got. Um, he was sentenced to 3.5 years in prison in order to pay more than 19 million in restitution and
Mm.
forfeitures. Um, Hang on. I don't know if he's out. Let me check. Is Rick Singer still in jail? College admissions. Well, he's sentenced. No, he must still be in jail because he was sentenced in January 2023. Three
Oh,
and a
okay,
half
okay.
years. So
Hmm.
even if I mean, it's going to be drastically reduced, I'm sure, because he's rich and he's white, but surely he's doing at least more than a year. Massimo, Olivia Jade's dad, got 5 months in prison. Lori
Oh,
Loughlin,
did he? Did he? Oh, interesting. Okay. Why him and not his wife?
I was trying to finish the sentence.
Okay.
Lori Loughlin got 2 months in prison.
Oh.
Felicity Huffman got 14 days in prison.
Mm.
I mean, it's a fucking break, isn't it?
Did they all go to like fancy celebrity
Oh,
prisons?
I'm sure. But also 2 weeks is nothing. That's like
Hmm.
fucking.
Hmm.
I would literally, if I had to do 2 weeks in prison, I would hate it, but I would use it as a mindset of like, I'm going on a retreat.
Yeah, I was just gonna say those silent retreats
Do
that
you
don't
know what I
sound
mean?
fun.
No social media, just a chance to read lots of books,
Hmm.
maybe do a short course. Um, Other parents got between 3 weeks and 6 months. One got 9 months, um, but got a year probation, so basically
Why
got
do they get
nothing.
different sentences? Is it because they were in different states?
Maybe different states, maybe also different levels of deception, because some of them faked the SATs, some didn't.
Mm,
The
okay.
the the level of the level of deception I imagine involved. Um, a tennis coach got 6 months, as did the president of the tennis academy.
Hmm.
Well, he only got 3 months. One administrator got a year probation. The UCLA soccer coach got 8 months. I mean, these are not big sentences. Even for
Mm-mm.
Rick Singer, the mastermind, 3.5 years, knowing he'll probably get out early.
Mm.
the guy who took the test for people, you know, the invigilator who would fill in the form after the kids filled in the form, he only got 4 months. Rick's former accountant and also an employee got sentenced but didn't have to serve extra time because they'd already been in jail waiting for the trial. And they got 1 to 3 years probation. So it's like, just try not to be a dick for 1 to 3 years and you're fine. Former Georgetown head tennis coach. I mean, these are big unis, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Former Georgetown head tennis coach Gordon Ernst was sentenced to 30 months in prison with 2 years of supervised release. So that's quite a comparatively quite a strong sentence. Former head coach of Yale's women's soccer team, Rudolph Rudy Meredith. I thought he was the basketball. Anyways, Rudy Meredith was sentenced to 5 months in prison with 1 year of supervised release. Remember, he would have got a lenient sentence because he threw everyone under the bus. So who in this is the bigger evil? Is it the system? Is it the individual universities? Is it the coaches and administrators? Is it the parents? Is it Rick? Is it capitalism? Is it privatization?
You know, I don't think this problem would exist in a place like Scandinavia where education is like the quality of education is good regardless of what part of the country, and it is free.
It's more than free. In like Denmark, if you even stay in school past the age of 18, you get a monthly payment.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, education is a human right.
And it's also the attitude towards it, you know, it's like it benefits the whole of society to have people well trained in their areas.
It's like when they did introduce the top-up fees here. You know, do you remember when university when we went was $1,000 a year, remember?
Mm-hmm.
And then all they're doing is making a whole generation of kids, a lot of them not able to access university anymore. So it's like, do you not want doctors? You know?
Yeah.
Or
I
do you
mean, that
want to send
person
them
who's
abroad?
got
Because
the
that's the thing,
mind that can cure AIDS could be living in a council estate
yeah,
and
you know,
not
the other
able to
thing
afford
is
uni now.
top-up fees happened, so a lot went abroad at that point to study. Then fucking Brexit happened and they couldn't even do that anymore. So, you know, I just think at least in this country, there is so much wrong, and even more so in the States, clearly, with the whole education system. Education should not be a commodity, even at degree level.
Yeah.
You know, it's an
Yet
investment.
again, we would like to be more Scandinavian.
Yeah, but it's like an education, it's an investment in your future because we're all going to be old and need doctors, you know, and everything else. We need everyone in society to, you know, have, you know,
Yeah.
everyone from literally, you know, the guy that owns the chip shop to a GP, they all have an important function in society, and everyone should be given, you know, I'm a big believer in equal opportunities in education.
Yeah,
Everyone should be
and they
given
should
the
all
same.
get their training and whatever training and education they
So
need to do their
that's
job well.
essentially the number one evil, that education has become a commodity. And it's even worse in the States because fucking hell. I mean, I remember when top-up fees here happened. Luckily, it was after we went to university and it
Well,
was
it was
terrible.
introduced while we were at uni, but didn't apply to us
Mm,
because we were already at uni. So we were
yeah,
super lucky because
yeah.
I mean, already we had like, you know, student loans and obviously the fees or whatever, but they're nothing like the top-up fees.
Yeah, and but in the States, even the fees here are nothing compared to what they are in the States, you know? I mean,
I
people
mean,
are
top-up fees are what? When they introduced them, they were about
mm,
£9,000 a year, right? And it depended on the course and whatever. £9,000 is nothing compared to that
hmm.
$83,000 that we
I
just
mean, in the
saw.
States, parents are literally like saving for university for their kids before the kids are born, you know?
And
It's
remortgaging
crazy.
their houses and
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. And that's if they have houses that they own that they can remortgage. I mean,
Mm,
even, you know, it's just bonkers. So there's definitely something wrong with the system that means that it's open for corruption and cheating and scamming and scheming to work your way around it. I feel sorry for the kids. Obviously, the kids are the victims, not just the kids of these parents, but also all the kids that like didn't get a place because there's all these people. I don't think for a second that Rick Singer is the only one doing something like this either. You know, there are other
mm.
people and other schemes and other people bribing their way into unis or whatever. This is just the case that got uncovered and that included some high profile people. All those kids that aren't getting places because other people are buying the places that they deserve. It's just so sad. It just makes me really sad. And again, it's another example of how, like, if you've already got money and privilege, you can get more privilege, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a big fucking, I just think it's a big ethical issue, education being, you know, that if you have money, you can get a better education, because I just really believe that
I mean,
good
that in itself
education.
is bad enough. If you have money, you can get a better education is already a fucking problem in the system. But this is, and then if you have even more money, you can cheat that already
Yeah.
broken system, that already corrupt system that benefits you anyways, to get even more advantage.
Yeah.
That's fucked up.
Yeah. 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 And it's, I mean, even in the state school, you know, where you have things extras like music lessons and stuff like that that's charged extra for. Like when I first started teaching, the school that I was at, they actually offered free instrumental lessons for anyone. And normally these are like 20 quid a lesson in a school because they're subsidized. So that's reduced rate. And I thought that is amazing, because especially subjects like music, which is traditionally a very middle class thing, because obviously it involves paying for
Having
tutors.
to buy an
Yeah, buy
instrument
an
and
instrument
pay
and
for
then pay.
tutors
Yeah. So
and
I thought it
buy
was,
music books, which are not
yeah,
cheap either.
yeah.
And yeah.
So I thought it was great that the school I was teaching at offered, you know, free music tuition for anyone who signed up. And then that changed because of all the budget cuts in schools. And then you start
Hashtag
to,
fuck the Tories.
yeah. And things like that are just depressing, because I just think all kids should be given opportunities, the same opportunity, the same, you know,
You know, we
the
talked
same
about it before.
quality of education.
Yeah, and especially this is a different issue, but when the cuts come from departments like the arts, music, and so forth, those are seen as like luxury subjects is not the word, but maybe like secondary, lesser than English, maths, whatever. But they're so important in terms of developing a child's mind, giving them outlets to help their mental
For
health.
mental health, yeah, and that's the thing, you know, that's a good enough reason to have something on the timetable, you know.
Exactly. So
Anyway,
it's
that's a
just,
separate subject, but
anyways, we have a lot of things to rant about on this subject,
oh, but
and
you know what? So the reason I find this topic interesting is because, like I was saying at the start, so getting your kids into a special needs school is, there's more chance that they won't get a place than they will, because there are many more kids that need a space than there are spaces. And I always felt guilty, and I've been very open about this, for the fact that I managed to get both my twins in the same specialist school, because there was a big fight. It went on for a year, as most people in the situation have experienced. I was lucky to not end up in the tribunal with this case, but I felt very guilty because, you know, they were threatening to keep one kid in mainstream, wanted them to, you know, a school that just wasn't right. Um, and
I remember at one point there was talk of one going to school on one side of London, the other one on the
yes.
other side, and
And then also what they're doing is restricting the parent from then actually working, because you're driving between one side
you
of
would have spent
London.
the entire time in a car.
Yeah, as it stands, I already spent 3 hours in a car taking them to one school,
Yeah.
you know, 70 miles a day. But I felt guilty because when this was all coming to a head and I was getting nowhere with the council, and please take this as a note not to trust the council to make decisions for your kids, because they are making decisions based on finances and budget and not the kids' best interests. So do not think for a second they're specialists, because they don't even have the right qualifications to make decisions about education when they work in that department. But I felt guilty because I was hitting a brick wall, and this was threatening to be happening, you know, kids going to school separate sides of London and whatever, and not getting the education that they needed, one being in a school that wasn't right and one in mainstream, which would have been a fucking disaster, because both have, you know, high level support needs and are autistic. So, I
They're both
consulted,
adorable though.
yeah, they're perfection. And,
Mhm.
I consulted a solicitor, and that solicitor advised me on exactly what I needed to say in a very harshly worded letter. And I am fucking good at those. That is like, I fucking love an angry email or an angry letter.
That's your wheelhouse.
It is. I probably should literally niche into that. But anyway, I wrote a very harshly worded email based on solicitor's advice. And I was, for that year, a fucking nightmare to the council. A fucking nightmare. Like their worst nightmare.
Having worked for the council as well, can I just say, if you need or want anything from your local council, make yourself a fucking problem to where
Yes,
they hate when you call,
that's it.
and they will give you what you want in
To
the
get rid
end
of
just
you,
to make you go
to
the
get rid
fuck
of you.
away
And
because
this
they
is
just
it.
want an easy life.
And this is where I have the guilt because I made myself that nightmare. I also had the experience of being a teacher, had the experience of being a union rep, and so therefore,
And
like
the ability to hire a solicitor. I know
yeah,
none of those things should be necessary, but
yeah.
unfortunately,
So I felt very guilty because there are many, many parents and many kids I know who would have loved to have the outcome that I had, but they were either too polite
yeah, but
or
don't feel guilty because you literally work on helping parents do that, with
yeah.
Jude Morrow and
But my
stuff.
point was that like
Please get to it.
even if you didn't have like an excellent command of the English language, that would have been impossible. And their kids,
If you didn't have like a level of self-confidence to be able to
yeah,
push for
if I
that,
was less polite, there's a lot of polite parents I spoke to who said, oh,
if you didn't know how to navigate the
yeah.
system as well. I know, it's
So
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 unfair.
I have that, it wasn't fraud, but it was,
Yeah, but
I
you fought within the legal, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Within the
but you know what?
law.
It goes to show how far self-entitlement actually gets you. And
Yeah.
that's it. That's the thing, I think,
You need a healthy level of self-entitlement. You have to know what you're actually entitled to as a
Mm,
human.
mm.
But
I guess the
yeah.
difference is they took their self-entitlement, the wrong way. They took it in the wrong
Well, they
direction.
they were forging documents and so
Yeah,
forth. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
Anyways,
So
that
that was my
was
point.
I got most of my information from the Netflix documentary called The College Admission Scandal.
Oh, I was going to ask you where it was. I'm going to watch that
It's
tonight.
just really quite good. You always say that and you never
Yeah,
do.
I do. I watched the
Uh,
Belle Gunness one after
no.
you,
What Bell
not Belle
Gunness?
Gunness, not Belle Gunness, Belle Gibson.
Bell.
Yeah,
Oh,
Belle
good.
Gibson. Yeah.
Did you watch It's Always Sunny in
I
Philadelphia?
haven't watched that yet, for fuck's sake. I
One
haven't.
day.
One day I will, and we'll record some fucking Patreon
Anyways, let's
extras from
have a
that.
break
Uh-huh.
and then come back for People's Pulse.
Yes. Okay, I'm gonna
You
go
looked
pee.
like you forgot. Okay,
No,
go
I
pee.
was waiting for you to say that. Okay, I'm gonna go
All
pee.
right, go pee.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Part deux. People's Pulse.
So
People's Pulse. So, what was the question today?
the question today was what is the worst thing you would do for £1,000,000? And this is
Right.
following on from what's the worst you would do for £100? What's the worst you would do? I think we had £1,000. And do you
Right.
know what?
I think for me,
Yeah.
it's easier to list the things I wouldn't do at this point.
Okay. Do you want to start with you?
I probably wouldn't kill someone.
Yeah. That's on my list too, because the thing is, you have to still live with yourself,
Yeah,
you
but
know?
most other things,
Yeah, but like you couldn't do permanent harm to somebody.
no. No, I couldn't
So
maim someone, injure
yeah,
someone. Well, I could, if it involved injury, if I had to, like, I could scratch someone
yeah.
and then I would give them some of the million
I don't think we could do anything that would harm or impact somebody,
permanently.
yeah, lifelong, even if it was like financially impact them or like I think that's where the line is that like you
Yeah,
can't do anything so bad that it will fuck somebody else's life
yeah.
up, huh?
But most
Um,
other things, I would,
yeah, well, do you know, it's interesting what people come up with. I think this was another duffer question because there's sometimes, and when we ask about 90s movies, 90s songs, a fucking
We
shit.
just need to go back to that, I
I think
think.
we need to, yeah. I think our listeners are very moral, I've learned from because we learn a lot from the People's Pulse
Yeah.
and about them. And I think what it is that no one wants to do bad stuff, which is nice. We learned that about you. So we are
Yeah.
learning. We'll take that on board. We'll go back to favorite
You're
songs.
good people. Got it.
One thing we do know is the demographic and the age, and that's our age. So if we stick to things from the 80s and the 90s, it's a safe bet.
We know that you guys are good people that love a good poo story.
Oh, that too. I would love to do more of that kind of thing.
All right, okay, we'll think about it.
Oh, a few weeks ago, I started one of the episodes by telling you, oh, I've got something to tell you. And
Yeah,
then,
and you didn't.
yeah. Oh, so basically it's not that interesting, but since our listeners love a puke and a poo story, so basically it's not even that interesting. But the other day I puked spectacularly. And you know when you have to make that decision about it's coming, but you've got a nanosecond to decide because it's coming out and you have to really decide where is this going to happen. But you also
Wait,
know.
where were you for context?
So I started on my sofa, okay? And I was like, oh. And I think what happened was it was a mix between over excess on pancake day mixed with Ozempic. If I'm honest, that's where it all went wrong. And so I felt really sick during the night, but then I woke up the next morning, went on the sofa, and I was like, oh. And it was school half term, so thank God I didn't have a school run to do. And I was like, you know, in that second we were like, whoa, whoa, I feel like an avalanche coming up. And so I was like, shit. Okay, so you know the layout of my house. So the kitchen is off of so I ran down the hallway and the toilet and the kitchen are off of the hallway, right? The kitchen comes first. I realized by the time I got to the kitchen, a few meters away from the sofa, what is this? Okay, so for those who are listening through the medium of audio, my Zoom just a thumbs up appeared.
A little speech bubble is a thumbs up. Someone tell me how to switch that off because I don't know how to.
That's funny. So basically, yeah. So it made me think about what Susie said, her sister said. So if you can choose profound words, if you can choose between puking in the bin, in the sink, if you can choose between puking in the sink or pissing on the floor, you piss on the floor. Do you remember?
Yep.
And those were some sound words of advice.
Never a wiser word spoken.
But what happened was I knew I wasn't going to make it to the toilet because that was further away. So I was like, shit, maybe I can get to the kitchen sink, which is gross enough in itself, you know, but
no judgment here.
I didn't make it to the kitchen sink. I've got a small kitchen, but I covered the floor of my kitchen. I covered it. Like I puked 5 times. You know, when you're like, oh, I'm just going to lie on the floor and puke because that's all I can do in this situation. And you know what? I tell you what, kids don't give a fuck when you're sick. So I had Che, who's like me. He sadly has OCD. He was freaking out about the fact that I was puking because it's gross. And then I had Rio nudging me with a bag of Palm Bears while I was puking.
Open this!
To open her Palm Bears. Neither concerned for my well-being. But yeah, so I mean, it's not the funniest puke story, but you know, we like to share. So that's what happened. But oh God. You know, when you're like, how did my body contain this much?
Yeah, where did it come from?
Yes,
Oh,
where did it? Anyways, that happened. And then it was fine. But I do have another funny puke story about my dearest friend Karen. So she went to the beach and
oh no.
She was on her own because she does like to do a solo road trip. She was on the beach. She had her period, but you know when you have stomach cramps and you've got PMS, oh no, your period, and you're so nauseous. So she went to the seafront, literally the seafront, to puke. She was fully clothed by the way, like jeans, jacket, everything. She bent over to puke in the water, like full audience. And then what happened? Fucking Sod's Law. While she's bent over, a wave fucking went over her. Over her head. Can you imagine how much the world hates you the day you puke in public and then a wave comes crashing?
Washes it into your face?
Literally came crashed as she's fully clothed, wet, having puked in public. Oh, just, yeah. So, I mean, we love stories like this, but they're also terrible. Yeah, so that happened. But that's not the topic of our People's Pulse.
No,
so let's go back to the People's Pulse. Okay, so we have our dearest Coventry Karen, which is a different Karen. We got 3 Karens in our lives. So
There's
Okay,
room for more. If any of
there's
these people are
always.
Karens, come and tell us.
Okay, so this is a bit of an exchange. So she says, okay, I reckon £1,000 could pay off most of my credit cards. So what would I do for 1,000? Now I had to correct her on this in a sec, but hold on. I think I would do sober solo karaoke in a very busy pub or club, or the super high zip wire in Wales with my eyes open. And she said, I'm terrified of heights. Then I said, it's a million, Karen, it's a million. She said, oh my word, I misread. I would do crazy shit for a million. Let me think. And then she comes back to me. She did her homework. I would definitely steal a car. In fact, I'd go full on gone in 60 seconds and steal 50 in one night. She would do that for a million. Spend a month in a super haunted house alone if need be. I couldn't. That's where my line is interesting. Okay. Because that's
one of those things I would want to do. I just don't know whether I'd physically be
alone.
capable.
Can you imagine the haunted house?
I'm more concerned about being alone with my own fucking thoughts for a month.
But that for me would be probably one of the worst, in a haunted house alone for a month. That would be, I would go into shock and die. Then she said, I would orchestrate a riot on a Donald Trump rally.
Yeah,
these are really creative. These are creative.
Yeah.
Then she says, I like this one, break into Buckingham Palace and creep around doing things that would mildly inconvenience His Majesty and staff, like hide teaspoon, super glue toilet handles so they can't be flushed, rearrange all the food cupboards. And then I thought, what would be the crime there? Break-in, that would be the crime. I wonder what the time that you would do is for that.
I don't know, because I wonder what the guy got, because people have broken in, haven't they, before?
Oh, how the fuck did they get into Buckingham Palace? Like,
I don't know. I think one of them was Windsor Palace or whatever.
Oh, yes, I do remember that. Yeah, that wasn't so long ago, like a year ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that because like I remember going into Costa Coffee in Datchet, which is right next to Windsor, and there was a police officer with a gun. I was like, why you got a gun in Datchet? Nothing bad's happening here. Like anyone that knows Datchet, it's the tiniest village, which is like around the green. Yeah, very cute. Nothing there, nothing happening there. Anyway, he said it's because that happened, that someone tried to break. But it's interesting because you would have thought that so high security anywhere that's like the monarchy lives.
I don't know.
You know?
But
I wonder if your sentence would be worse because it's Buckingham Palace.
Yeah, I was just thinking, would it be like some kind of treasonous act or whatever? Anyway, yeah.
So then Karen says, I would swim with sharks. Now I found that one interesting. So I said, would you risk losing a limb swimming with sharks though for $1 million? Like, because that could happen. Would you swim with sharks knowing that you may
like not in a cage, but just out with sharks.
Yeah. And she said, with £1 million, I can buy a new bionic one. So that's funny because some of them, stealing cars, orchestrating a riot, like I would do that, I think, for less than $1 million. Definitely would. But swimming with sharks, I couldn't do. Or staying in a haunted house.
Potentially losing a limb, I think.
I couldn't do those two.
It would have to be more than $1 million.
But you know what? I love these answers because Karen, she really put thought into this, and she
really did.
You are carrying the people's pulse, you and Susie. So, my dearest Susie, I messaged her and she said, let me think on this. Not sure what the worst thing would be. Now we know she's going to produce gold. She has not come back to me yet, but I will read out her answer next week.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be good. Then we have our favorite Sam of Lazy Mule Art fame. Check out his artwork. Check out his Al Pacino that he's just released on his Instagram. Amazing.
So good.
Al Pacino Scarface. You can have it on a t-shirt.
My favorite item of clothing is my Jackie Brown mini skirt.
I was just going to say my favorite item of clothing is my brick top t-shirt.
Yeah. Let's wear them next week.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
And okay. So Sam says, I'd do any crime, and then in brackets, non-sexual, that landed me maximum 8 years custodial sentence. What's custodial? In prison.
Weird, because I would do sexual.
I mean, I wouldn't do a prison sentence for more than 3 months. I think that would be my limit.
I think for $1 million up to a year.
Oh, okay. Taking into account, including good time served, he says. I'd eat or drink anything that didn't kill me. I'd become a Tory. And then he signs off. Tell me where to sign. I'm afraid the £1 million is mythical. Yes. But I did some research. And I wanted to know, because I always think money in terms of property, right? So property investment. So £1 million, what that buys you is a 4-bedroom house in a nice part of London. I'm not talking central, I'm talking the outskirts.
In the
And
suburbs of London, yeah.
and then and then I was like, okay, well, what kind of return will that get me monthly? If you're mortgage free, you buy a property mortgage free for £1 million, that's £3,030 rent on average you can get from £1 million property. So would the rent be more if you bought £1 million property up north? No, the rent would be less, right? The rent would be less, obviously.
I don't know. I don't really know how it works, but
so this is based on London figures.
And then obviously you got to take taxes into account. So let's say you get 2 grand from that.
Oh, would you?
I mean, with taxes, expenses, fucking money aside for renovations.
Yeah, true.
If you've got a big house, there's going to be fucking more cost to it.
Yeah.
So
okay, so
let's say
you
clear 2 grand a month. So you're
Okay,
basically guaranteeing yourself
for
2
your
grand a month.
life. Yeah. So if you buy a house outright for $1 million, let's say you get 2 grand a month rent minimum for life. That's how I'm thinking. What would I do where for life I get that per month? That's decent, But yeah, I would not harm somebody or physically or do harm to anyone lifelong. I couldn't I couldn't stay in a haunted house. I would struggle even overnight, to be honest, because there's certain things you want to be able to do, but you can't physically make yourself do it.
That one is not a moral question. It's just a phobia.
Yeah, I don't think it's like, when people go bungee jumping, or jump out of a plane, I couldn't physically make myself do that because my body would stop me doing that,
Would you eat frog's legs?
Oh, $1 million, 2 grand for the rest of my life.
1 frog leg.
Okay, so I'll tell you how I would do it.
Close your eyes.
I would have to put it in a capsule.
Oh, we had this conversation. I don't think you can make it in a capsule.
You can, because you'd have to chop it up and put it in capsules.
Okay.
Because the texture of a frog leg in my mouth will live with me for life, and that's the problem.
I don't even know what you're saying. It's not like you've started the question with "I think," and then it's come up.
I think this is a glitch because I've seen it. Other people talk about this glitch.
Do you remember when you were talking about something and balloons came up?
Yeah. Oh, I remember being in a work meeting and kissy faces, like kissy lips were coming
out. Would you?
Let me see if there's any other responses. Yeah, thanks.
Wasn't there Jane?
There's no Jane, sadly.
Oh, Jane. Hope you're doing okay. Hey, we're gonna have to.
No, wait. What?
We're gonna have to revisit these questions because.
Hold on. Let me see if there's someone.
It's a very low rate of return here.
Okay. Oh, we have. Oh, so we've got Carly, the singer who I used to work with. She was a singing teacher. She's also an amazing singer, performer. She said, I would quite happily punch a Tory in the face for £1 million.
Do it for free. I'd do it for free.
Oh.
A good one.
Oh, no, that's it for today. That is it for today. But we had a lovely message from Julia that I need to get back to. Okay. Oh, okay. So Julia actually said something very interesting. I'm really sorry, Julia, because I realized I didn't reply to this message. I'm very good at replying to Instagram messages, less so on Facebook. I'm so sorry. But remember we were talking about Zoe and Chuckling Goat a few episodes ago?
Yes.
So Julia said something very interesting. So just to let you know, I bought kefir, a challenging drink, unlike the supermarket ones, and lovely soaps from Chuckling Goat before. Now, interesting that she says the kefir from Chuckling Goat is challenging because the one from the supermarket is just like drinking yogurt.
Yeah, I quite like kefir.
Yeah, it's nice. And then she says, I'm a Zoe member for the last 6 months, so happy to answer any questions that Dee may have. Get in touch with Julia. That's very interesting. Yeah, because we want to have our poop analyzed or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah, and not by Dr. Gillian McKeith.
Yeah. So okay, so you were asking, what would I do?
Yeah. Would you
I would do
think I
a
got
lot of
the answer.
embarrassing things. Like there would be probably no limit on what I would do that would be embarrassing for $1 million. Like, I mean, singing karaoke in public, absolutely fine. Absolutely fine.
Stripping.
Yeah, stripping was probably, I would, apologies for my vulgarity, but I would soil myself in public for $1 million, 100%, no question about it. Anything embarrassing I would do. Controversial stuff I would do. I think my line is
The moral stuff.
the moral stuff, the scary stuff, like haunted house, and
The phobia stuff.
so awful.
Where you just physically don't think you can do it.
Yeah. Or if I did do it, I would get over it. It would heighten my phobias and my OCD so bad that it would be even more problematic. So yeah, I couldn't do that. Oh God. But yeah, that would be my thing. If I had to eat something disgusting, it would have to be like chopped up, maybe powderized, put in capsules. That's what I would do. So, okay, tell me more about yours.
Not much. Like I said, the moral
What's the
stuff.
worst you would eat? What's the worst you would eat?
I still don't think I could eat meat.
Oh, for $1 million, D? Is it because it would gross you out?
It's because I just wouldn't be able to.
So it's a physical thing. It's a grossness thing rather than a moral thing.
No, because like I love the taste of meat and stuff.
Oh,
Like,
what?
okay, so obviously being vegetarian, there's always times where you accidentally eat meat, where someone accidentally serves you it or whatever.
So
And
what is
those
your
times,
objection for $1 million?
that the reasons why I became vegetarian to not do harm to others. I just know how shit I feel after I've eaten it accidentally. So
Okay.
if I ate it for my own benefit, I genuinely don't think. I talk about 5 million.
Wow.
Yeah, because then I would make very significant donations to the RSPCA to alleviate that guilt.
It's funny because even I've never been a vegetarian, but like I would have thought that was, it might gross you out a bit, but you get over it,
No, it's just like I know how sick physically, emotionally, whatever that I felt after I've accidentally eaten meat. And that was just an accident,
So what else would you do or not do?
I'd have sex with pretty much almost anyone.
Yeah, I was gonna say that wouldn't be my line. I wouldn't have a line of that for $1 million, Yeah, I mean, 10 grand, I think we said was our price for, low level.
Non-ugly.
Low level favors.
Yeah. So yeah.
Wow.
I would not do the month in the haunted house because
could you do one night alone?
But that's because I would struggle to do a month on my own.
But could you do a night? Because you were the kid who used to watch Stephen King films alone in the dark.
Yeah. I think I could force myself to do a week. I would really fucking struggle with it.
What about clowns?
No, nothing to do with clowns. What about clowns? Oh, I take it back I take it back when I said I would have sex with anyone. I would not have sex with a clown.
Do you think it's because of it? Do you think it's because?
Oh, 100%. Okay. That's why our generation is scared.
I think I have to go now because I'm scared myself.
Yeah, can we not talk about Stephen King, clowns? Oh, no.
I know, I want to go. I want to rip my microphone off again.
Oh, yet again, we've scared ourselves to end the podcast.
I'll tell you what, though. I like the fact that today's wasn't about murder. Yeah, that was good.
Just about assholes. All right, I love you. I love our sexy listeners so much so that I'm going to make them Merchant Navy merch.
I can't wait for that. I'm going to wear that one and have so much fun wearing that one because I'll laugh every time.
Yeah, I got to think about it. So what's
Make it look like official Navy attire.
Okay, I'll see what I can do. All right. Love you all. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey there. Thanks for being a loyal listener.
Do you need a new website or want to boost your social media performance? Or do you hate podcast editing? You've tried optimizing your website and social media channels, but you're still not getting the listeners, downloads, and engagement you want?
We, the Safie sisters, love helping people with tasks that they hate. We know a thing or two about podcasts, websites, and social media, and we love working with other podcasters and business owners.
So why not head over to switchbladesisterssocialclub.com and go to our Work With Us section. We believe in collaboration over competition. A rising tide raises all ships.
Bye!